Hello, and welcome to the Once Again podcast. We are your hosts, Ashley and Jason. In this episode, we'll be looking at the 2022 film, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. In this series, we won't be doing a deep analysis of the film, or giving a bunch of behind-the-scenes facts, but rather giving our impressions of the overall film and giving a score to the film. So don't worry whether you're Banana 1 or Banana 2, because everything will be okie dokie artichokey, and enjoy this episode. I thought you might enjoy that one.
Geriatric.
Oh god, it's lines from this movie though, but we don't need to talk about the real world things that you've experienced. Yeah, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers is a 2022 American live-action animated adventure comedy film based on the characters of Chip and Dale and a loose continuation of the animated TV series of the same name, excluding the duo's previous filmography, including their shorts from 1943 to 1959. The film takes place in a world where fictional characters in cartoons, movies, and other media live alongside humans. It centers on Chip and Dale, 30 years after the cancellation of their show due to a falling out, coming back to reconcile their differences while investigating the kidnapping of their friend and co-star, Monterey Jack. It received mostly positive reviews from critics, with praise for its humor, voice acting, and meta-commentary. At the 74th Primetime Emmy Awards, the film won Outstanding Television Movie. The budget for the film was between $50.6 and $70 million. I couldn't get a real number on that. So it was between those two. And it was last year, so I didn't convert it to this year's money.
Of course.
And the box office earning was only $1.5 million, but that's because it was only shown for like those 4 days in between when it was released in Los Angeles and when it premiered on Disney+. And
Yes.
to speak of that, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers premiered on May 16th, 2022 at the El Captain Theater in Hollywood, California, and was released as a Disney Plus original film on May 20th, 2022. According to Whip Media, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers was the most watched movie across all platforms in the United States during the week of May 20th, 2022, and the most watched movie across all platforms in the United States during the week of May 27th, 2022. According to Nielsen Holdings, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers was the fifth most watched program and the second most watched movie across all platforms during the week of May 16th, 2022 to May 22nd, 2022. According to Real Good, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers was the 10th most watched program across all platforms during the week of May 22nd, 2022 to June 1st, 2022.
Directed by Akiva Schaffer, written by Dan Greger and Doug Mand, based on Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers by Tad Stones and Alan Zalav, and Chip 'n Dale by Bill Justice. Produced by David Haberman and Todd Lieberman. Edited by Brian Olds. Music by Brian Tyler. Production company Walt Disney Pictures and Mandeville Films. Distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. The runtime is 97 minutes. Starring John Mulaney as Chip, Andy Samberg as Dale, Kiki Lane as Ellie Steckler, Will Arnett as Sweet Pete, Eric Bana as Monterey Jack, Dennis Haysbert as Zipper, Tress McNeil as Gadget Hackwrench, Tim Robinson as Ugly Sonic, Seth Rogen as Bob, J.K. Simmons as Captain S. Putty.
All right. So, this movie's pretty funny. I guess it kind of starts off set in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Chip and Dale are young chipmunks at school. We get to see it from Dale's
perspective. See them first meeting,
yeah, it's from Dale's perspective originally. And he tries to make a joke in class, and it doesn't go over well. And then he's sitting alone at the cafeteria, and Chip joins him. He says, "Hey, do you mind if I sit here?" And a friendship forms. Like, he says, like, "No, you're really funny. Your timing's just off a little bit." And, like, it shows that they
bond a little bit.
Yeah, they're in their high school talent show together, and then they, have a pocket full of dreams and a bag full of hope. And
they get successful with their television show, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, in the early 90s.
First, they had to do some commercials, and they had a little cameo on Full House
Yes.
and other things. And then they get Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, like you said. And it's going well. Here's something that was interesting to me, was that Dale's kind of our protagonist, and it shows that he kind of causes the rift between them that ends up canceling the show. But it's not exactly like Chip isn't, because like Chip was kind of enjoying the limelight a little bit, but not in like the way that like, oh, forget about Dale, like I'm the star. Like it wasn't that trope that they usually do in things like this, like where like they split apart because like one enjoyed the fame and the other one didn't, and wanted to be like a serious actor or something. Like that's the usual trope that they do with movies like this. But it's kind of like, it kind of shows that Dale, our protagonist and the person that's voiced, is the jerk, kind of, because like he's like, oh no, I'm gonna go do another TV show too, Double O Dale, which is a James Bond like rip-off thing, which oddly enough, evidently Ian Fleming and his family own the phrase Double O, so they had to pay money, because at one point Disney really was gonna make, I think it was they were gonna make Double O Duck, and it was gonna be a Donald Duck TV series where he was a spy and everything like that, but they would have had to pay money to Ian Fleming's family to use the right to say Double O. They didn't want to do it then, but they did it here for this movie for a joke. But yeah, he and Double O Dale flops. It never even gets past the pilot, and because he did another show, their show gets canceled. Yada yada yada. They've split up. They've been apart for these years. Dale is doing Comic-Con circuits to make money that way. Feigning that he's more popular than he really is. We got a great Baloo cameo because he's setting up that he's being called on stage and all that. Oh, I gotta go. Like he's on Instagram or whatever, and he's like, I'll see you guys soon. And then they call out Baloo, and Baloo's like the most popular one because he's gotten a CGI redone because of the Jungle Book movie and everything. And then Dale has also gotten CGI surgery done.
Which is so funny.
Which makes he's still unique, but the way that I always could tell them apart was that Dale has a red nose. And his nose is less red in this. Like, it's still red, don't get me, but it's just not as, it just doesn't stand out as much.
But it still makes him different because Chip obviously did not get CGI surgeries. Chip is the standard, normal chipmunk.
Which I can only imagine what it went into doing the two different styles of animation.
Consistently through the whole movie.
Yeah, it must have been work, I would imagine, but it's very well done.
It's a well done film, and Chip is a disillusioned insurance salesman.
Yeah, but he's an employee of the month every month. He's good at what he does, even though he doesn't enjoy it. And
exactly.
I thought, when he said he had to go home, I forget what was her name, Molly or Maggie or something like that. I thought he was going home to his wife or something, but it's his dog. He has to go home to his dog.
Yes.
He lives in a tiny little chipmunk house, but he has the dog in there with him too and everything. It's pretty funny. That's something that I like, that they integrated in this world that's cartoon characters and everything, that there are chipmunk-sized houses next to regular houses and everything like that. He even has like a security gate that he has to go through and everything like that.
Yes.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, one of the ways that they show, not just Chip and Dale are in this class, there's also a Transformer in their school. I don't know who the Transformer is, but there's a Transformer in their school when they're kids and everything. But so, Chip gets a call from Monterey Jack saying that he's in trouble and he needs his help. So Chip shows up because he's a good friend, and it turns out Monterey Jack has a horrible cheese addiction that he just can't get, and he's in debt to the Valley Gang, I think their name was, and he owes them money, and he's afraid that they're going to come and bootleg him.
Yes.
It turns out the Valley Gang is kidnapping, which in the movie they say 6 cartoons, but at the end of the movie we see a whole bunch more than just 6.
Yes. They have bootlegged a lot of people.
Yeah, and they're forcing them to do terrible bootleg versions of Disney and other types of movies.
Also, Chip and Dale are both there. It's not just Chip. Monterey has called both of them.
Dale shows up. Yeah. He called both of them, and Dale shows. And Chip leaves pretty much right when Dale gets there because he's angry that Dale's there because they haven't seen each other in so long. Even though he says to him that everything is okie dokie artichokey, and Dale takes him at his word. Dale, in the meantime, has been talking about how everyone's talking about a Chip and Dale reboot, Rescue Rangers reboot that's happened, but he's the only one that's talking about it. No one's actually talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And Monterey Jack ends up getting kidnapped. It ends up happening, and they mention that he wears this horrible Chip and Dale cologne that smells awful. That'll come back later in the plot. But Chip and Dale get called back to the scene of the crime because they were the last 2 people to talk to Monterey Jack. And they meet these police officers, Captain Putty, who's a
claymation Putty character. Yeah. He's interesting. I like him.
I think it was J.K. Simmons that voices him, and he does a great job. And they also meet Officer Ellie Steckler, who claims to be a huge fan. She can't
Who is a human, we should mention.
Yeah, she's a person.
An actual person.
Yeah. She can't name what her favorite episode is, though, and stuff like that. So that'll come back later as well. But she tells them that basically the cops can't do anything about the Valley Gang, that Chip and Dale have to solve this crime themselves. So they're like, well, we're not going to let our friend get bootlegged, so they decide to solve the crime. And they find that piece of stinky cheese and find an address for it, and they go to Bjornson's The Cheesemongers. That's the guy that has it, which it's on Main Street, which when they went to Main Street and it was Main Street USA Disney. Like I cracked up, and a bunch of cameos. There's cameos throughout. There's
cameos everywhere. I mean, we didn't even talk about Ugly Sonic being.
Oh, yes.
We didn't even talk about Ugly Sonic.
Ugly Sonic is at the Comic-Con, and it's a great It's fantastic. It's probably the funniest one of the entire film. But he's talking about how he's doing a new FBI TV show. He's going to be like a TV show where he's an FBI agent or something like that. And Dale's like focused on his ugly teeth and everything.
And Dale's like, they're gonna give you a show.
Yeah. I'm just picturing it and I'm laughing. But yeah, there's cameos. Like there's a picture of Dobby from Harry Potter. Like he became a Gucci model or something. Yeah. And like there's a great Batman versus E.T. joke in this as well. There's cameos all throughout the whole thing. I actually tried to find a list of everything that was in here, and I did. It was way too long. I wasn't putting it in the notes. I was like,
the amount of money Disney must have paid to get all these characters to like rights just to put in for like even like a second.
Yeah, because even
astounding for a Disney Plus film.
Yeah, because the Batman cameo, I would imagine that would have probably been the most expensive, considering the fact that we don't really see him. We see his silhouette. Mm-hmm. Like he's wearing the Batman versus Superman mech suit that he used to fight Superman in that movie and everything, but you still never really get a clear picture of him. Like it's just his silhouette. Well, like I imagine like they must have been like, okay, well we only have to pay X amount of money if we do it this way, rather than paying X plus X money to have a full But it's fantastic. We get a Roger Rabbit cameo when they're at a club earlier celebrating Chip and Dale being as successful as it is and everything. But they end up getting kidnapped by the cheesemonger, and he sends them to the uncanny valley where the kid, like, before they said it, I was like, that lady walking her dog looks really weird. Like, but then they say it's the uncanny valley because it's animation that's almost realistic, but something's just off. Yeah. And we meet Seth Rogen's character, who's, I guess he's supposed to be like that Beowulf movie that they made in the 2000s, like that kind of look. They say he has the Dead Polar Express eyes in it and everything. But and which I also love towards the end of the movie, all the Seth Rogen character cameos that we get. That made me laugh. But they find out that the person running this organization, the Valley Gang, is Sweet Pete, and they find out that it's an adult version of Peter Pan. That after he started to get older, he had this big movie when he was a kid, Peter Pan, and then no one wanted anything to do with them. So he got into this business of kidnapping cartoons and, bootlegging them, like taking features away from them and making bootleg copies of their movies and everything like that. And he's going to bootleg them because now they know all about this.
Yes.
They managed to escape, though. They flushed themselves down his toilet, which I love that Chip was trying to clean as if that's going to make a difference before, like he's like cleaning the toilet before he jumps down it. And I guess we should mention that Andy Samberg and John Mulaney voiced them, and they it's just their voices, except when the two of them are arguing with each other, then they get into that Chip and Dale voice. But I always forget John Mulaney's name. It's so funny because I talk about, like, I'll mention like bits that he does because he's a pretty funny comedian, and I'll talk about bits and I can never remember his name, so I'm surprised I remembered it there.
Good job.
Yeah. But they call Ellie, and they're like, listen, they have Monterey Jack, and they realize that Sweet Pete has the same type of step tracker that Dale wears. Mm-hmm. So if they can get that step tracker, they'll find out where he's been, and they can use that. So they go to this, Russian bathhouse that he goes to, to get. He's going to be in the steam bath or whatever, so they manage to get his tracker off of that after a few more cameos, including Randy from South Park being in there and everything.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe they did that.
Yeah.
Like, some of the cameos in here, I'm like, wow, we just went for it, didn't we?
Yeah. And they find the location of where he's been, like where he's hiding this machine that he uses to bootleg the tunes and everything. They go there. Chip ends up getting stuck in the machine and getting bootlegged. He gets a Snoopy ear that everyone makes fun of him for a while for. And it turns out that one of the cops is in on this. And it's either Ellie or it's Captain Putty.
And obviously Ellie has been kind of a little weird, a little bit here and there. Sus.
But they say in the movie it would be a cliche for it to be the captain. Like, they're like, no, it can't be the captain because it's a cliche at this point. It has to be Ellie. And then it turns out it's the captain.
It is the captain.
Yeah. And he's like, of course it's me. And I did it because I had a sick mother, blah, blah, blah. No, I did it for the money, you idiots. Like, we make money off of this. So anyway, Chip gets kidnapped, and Ellie ends up getting kidnapped. They're back at this location where Sweet Pete's going to fully, like, splice, or whatever the phrase was that they used, bootleg Chip. And he's going to... And Dale gets a secret coded message from Ellie about her favorite episode and everything like that. And Dale goes through this ridiculous realization, like, oh, this meant this and this meant this and everything. And it's not the message that she was trying to say to him, but he gets the right message anyway.
Somehow.
Yeah. And he ends up asking for help from Ugly Sonic. And
with his FBI contacts.
Yeah, and he gets help from the other rescue rangers, Zipper and Gadget. And I love that Gadget has the line in the movie where she's like, "Oh, I guess my character in the cartoon and my character in real life are pretty much the same thing. like I didn't change that much at all." And Zipper is voiced by the guy from the Allstate commercials, which was all I could hear. Like it
was so good.
Yeah. I guess we should also mention Sweet Pete has that little line where he makes a Men's Warehouse joke. Because I think the guy that plays Sweet Pete did the Men's Warehouse commercials as well. But anyway, there's a lot of references in this movie. They end up saving Chip. He doesn't go through the bootlegging. And they end up stopping Sweet Pete. I don't know how much you want to dive into it. And they stop the Putty Captain. Ellie has a fight with him where she uses... fire extinguisher to freeze him and everything. And Sweet Pete ends up getting bootlegged himself into this monster version. Like he's got the fat cat face from the cartoon show that was their enemy. He's got Wreck-It Ralph's one arm. He's got a Transformer leg. He's got all different amalgamations put together. Yeah. And he's chasing after them. They managed to pull the same trick that they used on Fat Cat in one of the Rescue Ranger episodes where they dropped this net on him to stop him. And as he's getting arrested, he turns around and he shoots, I think, a Mario bullet. Like one of the bullet things from Mario.
Yes, it is one of those.
Yeah. And
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And Dale jumps in front of it to save Chip. And Chip thinks that Dale's dead. But it turns out this little Pog coin that he gave him previously saved his life and everything.
Oh my God.
But it's funny. It's really good. I'm going through it real quick, but there's a lot of funny stuff in here.
It's a very funny movie, and it's, like I said, it's a very good spiritual successor to Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, and due to the fame of them stopping Sweet Pete, and they rescue all the tunes that he has kidnapped there. He's got hundreds of them, and they rescue Monterey Jack, who's got Dumbo ears at this point. And all the tunes get fixed and everything like that. Sweet Pete goes to jail, his men go to jail, and everything like that. But for me personally, one of the best parts of this movie was the very end. I highlighted it because they're going to do a Rescue Rangers reboot due to the popularity of them, like doing this real world thing and saving people. And Darkwing Duck is at the Comic-Con where it gets announced, and he's so mad. He's like, "No, there should be a Darkwing Duck reboot." And I love, because Darkwing Duck was one of my favorite characters growing up. I have memories. My mother had this purple bathrobe that I used to wear when Darkwing Duck came on. Like that was my Darkwing Duck robe. But yeah, that's how the movie ends. Like there's going to be a Chip and Dale reboot and blah blah blah. Yay! They saved the day. Is there anything else you want to talk about plot-wise, or?
No, I mean, I think you went over it pretty well. I love Chip and Dale. I loved Rescue Rangers as a kid, so, like, this movie was just really good for, like, that nostalgia factor. I just appreciated that, like, Disney really went there and, like, found and got all the different rights to have all these different things. Like, they could have just taken from their physical canon. They have so much, they own so much, and they still went outside the box and, like, went to other studios, which they didn't have to do.
Yeah.
Like, reasonably.
One of the trivia notes that I have here, I mentioned it was one of my favorite parts, was Seth Rogen, who plays the character Bob in this, has a scene with 4 characters he has played. When Bob is tripped up by Chip and Dale and lands on the floor, he looks up to see Pumbaa from The Lion King, Mantis from Kung Fu Panda, and B.O.B. Bob from Monsters vs. Aliens. And that part cracked me up, because it was like they all just look at him and they're like, they do the Seth Rogen laugh, like, because he fell and everything. Yeah, there's a little bit of trivia, like, other notes here that are kind of interesting. Just like they changed the Hollywood Walk of Fame to have Squidward, Yogi Bear, Samurai Jack, and Chun-Li from Street Fighter on it. Like, that's pretty, like, a funny little thing in there. We see that Butthead from Beavis and Butthead is running for the Senate. Like, there's so many blink and miss it cameos in the background of this, but it's great.
You'd have to watch it so many times to catch them all. It's crazy.
Also, this isn't originally the main villain of this movie was going to be an adult version of Charlie Brown from the Peanuts. However, Disney couldn't afford the rights to the character and the entire Peanuts series, since they only own the distribution rights to the Peanuts movie from 2015. When Disney bought 20th Century Fox in 2019, and the entire Schultz family estate rejected the idea. So he was replaced by Peter Pan, which it's interesting that, like, his motivation behind this is that he's older now and, like, no one wants to work with him, but he has this machine that can change the way that cartoons look. Like, why not just make yourself younger? Like, it's kind of a plot hole.
Well, what's interesting, too, is that I don't know if you know the, like, real life story of, like, the person who played, like, voiced Peter Pan, and, like, there was a lot of, like, he did end up committing suicide or something because when he got to be an adult and he, like,
no one
couldn't, couldn't get, so, like, a lot of people thought that Disney was being a little not exactly good about it by choosing Peter Pan, but when you tell me that it originally was supposed to be Charlie Brown, like, I'm like,
that makes some more sense.
It, like, maybe they were just like, Peter Pan's, like, something else we got. Like, I mean, how many, like, what are your other options?
Yeah.
Like,
child cartoons.
Stars, yeah.
I guess it could have been, like, Johnny Quest or something like that, but who knows who has the rights to that. But yeah, I guess we'll just dive into our overall scores then. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? Or
I would give this an 8 out of 10. I love this movie. It's such a good movie. I love Chip and Dale. I love Rescue Rangers. I like that, again, I like that Disney really went the mile with this, to, like, pick up extra, like, rights and stuff to make this happen, because they own so much that, like, realistically they didn't have to do that at all. I would say, like, they could have just picked from what they owned, but they didn't. And I think the animation is pretty good, considering it's a different, there's so many different styles of animation going on here. Like, can't imagine what it was like to make this movie, so I think an 8 out of 10 is pretty good.
Okay. And I wrote down that I'm mixed about this one. While I did enjoy it, and I think it's a modern-day masterpiece of animation, the plot and humor left me wanting more. I feel like the plot was very simplistic, and the humor was targeted at young children a good 60% of the time. And while that may be good for some Disney movies, this one's target demographic should have been people that were 30-plus years old. So the plot could have been better, and the jokes more adult. Maybe this was done under the impression that 30-plus-year-olds have children so the whole family could enjoy this film, but personally I hated movies that were dumbed down for me as a child, and I think children today are smarter than I was. So while it's an enjoyable movie, I personally wanted more from it. All that being said, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I still think it was very good.
I get where you were going with this simplistic and humor and stuff, but I also think that's just because I think they were probably focused so much on the animation and stuff and trying to work this out in a way that made sense.
Yeah. I mean, it was, if I remember correctly, it was written by the guys from The Lonely Island, which is, I would imagine, why Andy Samberg is Dale in the movie and everything. But, like, so I expected more adult humor in this than we got. A lot of the jokes were really aimed at kids. Which, I don't know, I think, like, when you're rebooting, sequeling something that has an audience that the target demographic was, 30 years ago, you should have more adult humor in it.
I guess you're right.
Roger Rabbit had a lot of adult humor. Like, I was expecting more along the lines of Roger Rabbit humor in this than what it was. It's still very good, and like I said, the animation, wow, like 10 out of 10. It's just, the plot was very simple. They even, make meta jokes about the plot being simple in it, saying like, oh, it has to be LA because it can't be Captain Putty because that's a cliche, and then it's Captain Putty that's the bad guy. But it is a great movie. I highly recommend checking it out. If for some reason you've listened to our podcast about it, go, and you haven't seen it yet, go see it for yourself. Even knowing what happens in it, the broad strokes that we painted, you'll still enjoy it. Like, it's
100%.
Yeah.
And you'll find more little things that we probably didn't even notice. So.
Yeah, agreed. All that being said, this has been the Once Again Podcast. Any questions, comments, or critiques can be addressed to our email at onceagainpod@gmail.com. Follow us on our social media accounts, Once Again Pod, on one word, on Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to contribute to the podcast, we have several tiers available on patreon.com/onceagainpod.
Sorry.
Excuse me. As always, a like, follow, or share would be greatly appreciated. Thank you and have a wonderful day. And remember, we will entertain you. We will always entertain you.